Are fuel additives worth the money, or are they just another snake oil? Let's find out. Marketing versus reality. Fuel efficiency, fewer regenerations, massive horsepower. Cylinder pressure, fire. Voodoo magic, independent studies. Can waste a lot of money. Make things worse. Don't buy those. Total waste of money. Weird. It's science. Welcome back to the Freedom Works. My name's Jamin, and today we're talking about diesel fuel additives. Fuel additive companies make a lot of bold claims. More power, more MPGs, faster starts, less smoke, less noise, and toxic masculinity. But do they really deliver on all those promises? Should you really spend money on these additives, or is fuel from the pump good enough? I'll give you the science behind fuel additives so you can decide for yourself. I think this one's got Peronis. Weird. So here's my plan. First, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about the fuel you're buying from the pump, because you really need to understand what's coming from those hoses to understand how fuel supplements fit into the picture. Second, I'm going to tell you what they put in these bottles and what kind of voodoo magic it supposedly does. And finally, I'm going to show you the test data that will help you decide if you want to spend money on this stuff. But first, have you ever wondered why diesel engines knock? Well, I'm going to explain it. And if you understand what causes diesel knock, it'll help you understand how fuel supplements work. Probably. Certainly. Maybe? That knocking sound isn't caused by anything mechanical like pistons, rods, valves, or oil pan L's with tiny hammers. It's simply the sound of combustion in the cylinders. Premixed combustion to be specific. Which sounds more complicated than it really is, but I can simplify this term for you with this piece of bacon and a graph. These two lines indicate cylinder pressure and heat release inside the cylinder on the y-axis and crank angle on the x-axis. Premixed combustion is this area right here. Start of injection is right here at about 18 degrees before top dead center. But as you can see from the heat release line, the fuel doesn't combust and produce heat until right here at about 13 degrees before top dead center. Fire! This area here is called ignition delay. This is when fuel is being injected while simultaneously vaporizing and beginning to react with the oxygen in the extremely hot cylinder. When combustion finally begins, premixed combustion to be specific, all of the fuel that has been injected up to that point combusts almost instantaneously. This results in a sharp rise in heat and pressure inside the cylinder, as you can see here. That pressure spike is what causes diesel knock. It's very similar to knock or detonation in a gasoline engine, just not as severe. This is one reason that diesel engines are built so robustly, to handle that pressure spike. But what's important to understand is that if you can reduce the ignition delay, you reduce the amount of fuel that's in the cylinder prior to the start of combustion, and this will reduce the magnitude of the pressure spike, and thus reduce the knock. So here's some things that can actually increase the injection delay and make the knock worse. More injection timing advance. When the fuel is injected earlier, the combustion air isn't at max temperature yet, so you're injecting much longer before the ignition begins. That's one reason why high-performance diesels knock more. Lots of timing. Colder intake or cylinder temps, because more fuel gets injected before ignition begins. That's why cold diesel knocks more. Poorly atomized fuel. Poorly atomized fuel takes longer to evaporate, mix, and ignite. That's why engines with dirty injectors, or high-performance injectors with larger holes, knock more. And one last thing that causes more knock. Poor quality fuel with a low cetane number. And this is where diesel fuel additives come into play. Cetane improvement. Okay, before we jump into the topic of fuel treatments, let's get our hands around the fuel itself. Diesel, otherwise known in Europe as diesel, is generally made from crude oil. We all know that. But there's a lot of variance in the fuels that come out of different pumps based on what crude oil it was made from and what processes were used to refine it into diesel. Diesel that comes from North Dakota crude oil will be different than diesel that comes from New Mexico crude. They come from completely different dinosaurs. But let's get serious. Crude oil is like whiskey. Stay with me on this one, it's a really good analogy. Whiskeys are made from grains grown in different places, aged in different barrels, made of different woods, and aged for different lengths of time. So in the end, each cask of whiskey has a different flavor. The distillery will blend those different flavors together to get the desired taste, color, proof, etc. Same with crude. When you refine different flavors of crude, the diesel fuel that results will have different characteristics, like lubricity and cetane level. And just like with blended whiskey, the oil companies blend those different flavors of diesel to get a final diesel blend with all the right vitamins and minerals. You see, the federal government, specifically the EPA, dictates the minimum standards that diesel fuels must meet in the USA. And the oil companies are trying to produce a final diesel blend that just barely meets those standards because that's what makes them the most profit. The EPA requires diesel fuels to meet the requirements of ASTM D975. The D975 spec contains 13 different parameters that diesel fuels must meet, but I'm only concerned with a couple in this video: cetane number and lubricity. The others have to do with cold weather performance and other crap we don't care about down here in Georgia. The cetane number describes the ignition quality of the fuel. The higher the cetane number, the greater the fuel's tendency to ignite, which is good because there are no spark plugs. Diesel has to ignite on its own in the cylinder. So more cetane is more better. A cetane number of 50 to 55 is ideal for maximum performance and efficiency. For you gasoline guys, I'll compare the cetane rating to the octane rating. The cetane rating is the exact opposite of octane rating. A higher cetane number means the diesel auto-ignites more easily. A higher octane number means that gasoline auto-ignites less easily. It's science. Now, lubricity should make sense to you. The better the lubricity of the fuel, the better it can protect your pump and injectors from wear. Lubricity of fuel is measured using a high-frequency reciprocating rig, or HFRR, which is a lot like OPP, but completely different. So I'll just say heifer. 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 In a heifer test, a steel ball is moved back and forth across a steel plate, lubricated by the diesel, producing a wear scar. The smaller the measurement of the wear scar, the better the lubricity, so a lower number is better. Diesel from US pumps is required to have a minimum cetane number of 40, and for lubricity, a maximum heifer score of 520. And for reference, diesel in European countries and the People's Republic of California require a minimum cetane number of 51 and a maximum heifer score of 460. That's one of the reasons that California diesel always costs more. It's actually better, allegedly. Now, some of the raw diesels produced from the distillation process are going to exceed those minimum specs, while others will fall short. The oil companies will blend those inferior fuels with those fuels that exceed the spec, and then end up with a blend that can meet the minimum specifications. But sometimes those blends still can't meet the minimum specs of D975, so the oil companies use additives to get the fuel to where it needs to be. But here's the important part. Additives are expensive, and they aren't going to spend any more money trying to make that fuel any better than the bare minimum. That means they're leaving a lot of room for improvement, and your engine could run better and last longer if you optimize the fuel. Let's take a minute to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Factor. Factor ships fresh, never frozen meals directly to your door. You might not have noticed, but I've lost about 30 pounds this year. American pounds, not British pounds. That's a result of more exercise and a better diet. I maximize the protein, minimize the carbs and sugar, and I only eat between 2 and 8 p.m., allegedly. That consists of 2 real meals and 2 protein shakes per day. And honestly, the hardest part of my routine is coming up with 2 balanced, nutritious, and tasty meals every day. And that's where Factor comes in. Factor takes the stress out of my meal planning and sets me up for success. I skip the grocery store, the prep work, and the cooking fatigue. Instead, I get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to my door. Factor offers 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan plus veggie, and many more. I choose the keto meals to help me minimize my carbs. I'm not certain what a Fundito is, but apparently it's keto friendly. And one of my favorites is the cheesy bacon ranch shredded chicken, because who doesn't love bacon and ranch? There's even some chicken in there for those of you that like vegetables. Just kidding, folks. I actually eat tons of vegetables. Probably. Factor's also very flexible. I can change my order up every week with plans from 4 to 18 meals per week, and I can pause or reschedule my deliveries anytime. Factor's convenient, cost-effective, delicious, and flexible. Highly recommend. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use the code 50FreedomWorks to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50FreedomWorks at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Thanks to Factor for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to diesel science. Okay, now that you're a diesel fuel expert, let's talk more about additives. What's actually inside these bottles? I just told you that if the oil company could not meet the minimum requirements of D975, they would use additives in their fuel blends to just barely meet the specifications. Here's the thing, the additives that oil companies use in their diesel fuels are basically the same additives that are in these bottles. Yep, same stuff, for the most part. These bottles don't contain unicorn tears or snake oil. It's just the stuff the oil companies could have used more generously in their own fuel blends if profits weren't a concern. So does that mean that all of these fuel treatments are the same? Nope. They all have a lot of the same stuff in them, but in different proportions depending on their intended benefit. Some are intended to raise cetane, some increase lubricity. Some are intended to clean, and some attempt to do a little of everything. And some actually make things worse. Snake oils. Don't buy those. You need to buy a fuel additive that is designed to do what you want it to do. In a perfect world, Al Gore's diesel fuel treatment would provide you maximum cetane and maximum lubricity while keeping your fuel system squeaky clean. But this ain't a perfect world. You can only put so much of each type of additive in a bottle, and you can only add so much of any product to the fuel before the product actually starts diluting the fuel. Additionally, many additives actually fight the properties of other additives. Cetane improvers actually reduce the lubricity of the fuel, so you have to balance cetane improvers with lubricity improvers to get the optimal result. Let me give you a visual to help explain this choose the right treatment part, and this is from the Hot Shot Secret website. So the main categories of diesel fuel treatments are system cleaners, cetane boosters, lubricity improvers, cold weather anti-gel or de-icers, and finally, all-in-one treatments, which can do a little bit of everything listed above. That's going to be your Hot Shots Everyday Diesel Treatment, Archoil AR6500, Optilube XPD, PowerService Diesel Clean, and Stanadyne Performance Formula, etc. The all-in-one flavor is right for most people. Cetane improvers, they make more power and miles per gallon. So they're your friend, right? Well, meth gives you more power in MPG. Is meth your friend? As stated earlier, cetane boosters reduce lubricity, so a cetane booster alone is not good for your unit. So you have to be careful when choosing something marketed only as a cetane booster. This cetane booster also has lubricity additives. Injector and system cleaners. If you just bought a new-to-you diesel, or you've neglected your diesel's fuel system its entire life, you may want to start with something like Diesel Extreme or Archoil AR6400D, because they are formulated primarily for cleaning your junk. Lubricity improvers. It's lotion for the motion. It helps reduce or prevent wear to your injectors and injection pump. This one's a no-brainer, but I don't know in what scenario you would choose a lubricity improver and forego all the benefits of the more balanced treatments. But if you know, leave it in the comments. Anti-gel and de-icers. If you live somewhere that's cold enough to turn your diesel into gel or freeze the moisture in it, reevaluate your life choices. You can buy these flavors of fuel treatment or just move closer to the equator. I recommend the southwestern US. They've got plenty of room over there. And all-in-one treatments. This is what most of you guys are buying. And for good reason. They're formulated to do all of the above, allegedly. These are all-in-one treatments, and the bottles pretty much all say the same thing. Increased fuel economy, cleaner fuel system, reduced maintenance, extended component life, and thicker hair. But is there actual science behind these claims, or is this just another baseless money grab? The answer is yes, it's actually science, but they also want your money, also. So now let's talk about that science and whether or not fuel additives are worth your money. Diesel fuel treatments do actually provide better fuel economy, fewer DPF regens, and less maintenance and component replacement. These are all things that have been proven and tested by people much smarter than me, and I'll show you those studies so you don't have to take my word for it. Never trust a lefty. Let's start with the big one, improved fuel efficiency. Honestly, even if all the other alleged benefits were a lie, this one kind of makes it all worth it. And there are plenty of studies available on the internet that will verify this, and I've even linked some in the description. SAE 872146, titled Benefits of Multifunctional Diesel Fuel Additives Demonstrated in a Fleet Test, indicates about a 4% increase in fuel economy in lab and real-world testing. And that was from an additive that didn't even contain cetane improvers. That efficiency came completely from a lubricity improver. It's impressive. And this joint study between Hot Shot Secret and the city of Columbus, Ohio, testing the efficacy of Hot Shot Secret's Diesel Extreme and Everyday Diesel Treatment on reducing regenerations on 2 city-owned diesels over 5,000 miles in 400 hours, showed a significant reduction in DPF regenerations and thus a significant reduction in fuel cost. I'll leave a link to that study in the description. I'll also give you my own anecdotal evidence from using diesel fuel supplements for over a decade. I consistently see a 5% minimum increase in fuel economy when using fuel treatments. I'll use my old 2001 Volkswagen TDI as an example because it allows me to talk in whole numbers. I used to run hundreds of highway miles a week in that car with the cruise control set at 75 miles per hour. On occasions when I would run out of fuel treatment, my MPG would consistently drop from 49 MPG to 46 MPG. Now that's actually 6.5% if you math it, but I'll say 5% just to be conservative. That's a consistent, real-world 5% mile per gallon improvement. Okay, reduced maintenance and extended component life are a little harder to quantify, but obviously, if there are fewer regens, as demonstrated in the Hot Shot Secret study I just mentioned, the DPF will last longer. DPFs capture soot, Regens burn that soot into ash. That ash stays in the DPF, slowly filling it up until it's no longer serviceable, at which point you have to replace it. And in case you didn't know, DPFs are a service item. They are meant to be replaced. It's an unpopular reality. Let me know in the comments if you want a video on DPFs. Pretty sure I already know the answer, but comments help the algorithm. But I really want to focus on fuel system components in this video. These supplements increase the fuel's lubricity. That's easy to prove with the heifer score. If the heifer wear scar measures smaller, then the fuel has more lubricity and can reduce component wear. Notice I said can, not will, reduce component wear. This is one of those marketing versus reality things. That test rubs a stainless steel ball against a stainless steel plate under load submerged in fuel. It's designed to create a wear scar so that wear scar can be measured. I personally don't know of anywhere in a diesel fuel system that is designed to create a wear scar. So an additive that reduces the heifer score from 600 to 300 doesn't mean that using that fuel additive cuts injector or pump wear in half. The marketing department would like you to believe that, but it's just not real life. A higher lubricity score indicates more resistance to damage or wear if a component is overloaded, but it might not result in any reduction in wear under design loads. But let's use the Bosch CP4 injection pump to illustrate this point. The failure rate for CP4s is 4 to 7% in the USA and only 1% in Europe, where the fuel lubricity is better. CP4s were not designed for US fuels like CP3s were. CP4s were designed for European fuels with better lubricity requirements. Consequently, CP3s have a significantly lower failure rate in the US. So, older CP3s might not experience much benefit from the additional lubricity, while the CP4s almost certainly will. Probably. Personally, I'm going to make the assumption that the better lubricity does reduce component wear in my old CP3, because that helps me sleep better at night. If you want to see independent lubricity testing for these products, go check out these videos by the Motor Oil Geek and the Repair Geek. They show thousands of dollars worth of lab testing, and they discuss their preferred fuel treatments. All three of us prefer 3 different products for completely different reasons, and I'll share that later. I'll link to those videos in the description. And the final measurable benefit is a cleaner overall fuel system. This one is easy. Cleaner injectors provide a better spray pattern and better atomization. That means more power, more efficiency, and less smoke and emissions. There are plenty of independent tests that provide visuals and measurements of the effectiveness of additives on deposit reduction in fuel systems. I'll link those studies in the description, but I'm not going to spend any more time on this one. Now let's finish with the intangible benefits of diesel fuel additives. You can't touch or assign a dollar value to these things, but they do exist. With fuel treatments, the engine will start faster, run quieter, and smoke less. And all of that is due to the boost in cetane that these additives provide. Remember our discussion about diesel engine knock from earlier? The amount of knock is directly proportional to the amount of fuel injected during the injection delay period, or the length of time that the injection delay period lasts, however you want to look at it. More cetane means the fuel ignites at a lower temp or ignites sooner after injection, which means the engine is going to start faster when it's cold out, it's going to knock less when the engine is cold, and it's going to smoke less because the combustion process starts sooner, giving the fuel more time to complete combustion before the exhaust valve opens, meaning less smoke out the exhaust pipe. I can personally attest to all of the above because I can tell immediately upon the first cold start after a fuel up if I forgot to add my EDT. And I have a lab coat and eat bacon, so you know I'm trustworthy. Probably. So what do I personally recommend? Well, this is a mixture of science, economics, and practicality. And practicality is going to come first here. I would only consider the Hot Shot Secret EDT and Archoil AR6500 simply because they have bottles that allow me to accurately measure the dose of the treatment. And all the other bottles, you're not measuring anything. You're just going to pour some down the gullet and you're almost certainly going to overdose the fuel. Because you're a man and more is better. You're going to blow through this stuff and waste a lot of money, plain and simple. If it doesn't have a measuring spout, it's a non-starter for me. That being said, I think all of these, besides the Stanadyne, will provide adequate cetane and lubricity improvement. But they don't have a spout to measure with, so that narrows it down to these two. And these two both have independent testing readily available on their websites, which is another requirement for me. So, between these two, you can't really go wrong. At standard dose rates, testing indicates that the Archoil performs substantially better than the EDT. But, and that's a J-Lo size but, when you use the performance dose of the Hot Shots EDT, you have decreased that performance margin substantially. You're splitting hairs in the lubricity and cetane increase at that point, And the EDT is still cheaper at that point. So that's why I have been using EDT exclusively for many years. Now, full disclosure, Hot Shot Secret keeps my shelves stocked with oil and fuel treatment because they have a smart marketing team. Probably. But they don't pay me for endorsement. I'm just fortunate enough to be able to work with people whose products I already used. Honestly, when I started filming this video, I was going to recommend buying a bottle of the Archoil and then refilling it with EDT because the Archoil bottle was much better. It didn't leak as much as the EDT bottle. But Hot Shots just updated to this bottle to remedy that issue, so I have nothing negative to say about it anymore. So now you can skip the Archoil purchase and just go straight to the EDT. It's cheap, effective, and easy to find, and that's why I've used it for many years now. Now, I know the motor oil geek said he doesn't like EDT or XPD because they have potassium in them. Some of the potassium will end up in the oil and could mask coolant leakage into the oil. I understand where he's coming from, and he's not wrong. But since my analyses consistently show 1 to 2 ppm of potassium, coolant end leakage would be indicated by numbers above that benchmark in my trucks. So the fact that EDT contains potassium doesn't bother me. So now you know what I use. Let me give you the math that makes it make sense for me. The reason I use fuel treatment is to keep my fuel system clean and protect my injectors and high pressure fuel pump. They are extremely expensive and it's worth it to me to try and prolong their lifespan. But fuel pump and injector lifespan increases are hard to quantify. But what isn't hard to quantify is fuel efficiency and operating costs. My daily driver gets 16 mpg on average, but I'll say 15 mpg to be conservative. I drive at about 15,000 miles a year. That's average in the USA. That's 1,000 gallons of fuel per year. EDT costs me 10 cents a gallon, so I spend $100 a year on EDT. Assuming a conservative 5% mpg increase from EDT, that means EDT saved me 50 gallons of fuel a year, which cost me about $150 in 2025 here in Georgia. So conservatively, EDT saves me $50 a year or costs me nothing at worst. Basically, all it costs me is the time it takes me to purchase it and add it to my tank. And that doesn't even consider the intangible benefits of easier starts, quieter operation, less smoke, more power. And for you poor bastards with DPFs, you'll have fewer regenerations and even more increase in MPG. Probably. So in conclusion, I absolutely recommend running a quality fuel system treatment in every tank of fuel. I use Hot Shots EDT, but there's several good options out there, so just decide what makes the most sense for you. If you made it this far into the video, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons, leave a comment for the algorithm, and share this video with your know-it-all brother-in-law. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay curious.